Welcome to Podkey Daily News, your brisk brief on immigration, conflict, markets, and fallout. Two pressure points are driving this cycle. Force is ramping up, and the risks are spreading. That's true in immigration enforcement at home, and it's true in the Middle East, where energy markets are already reacting. The most consequential domestic story is the sharp escalation in ICE enforcement and the mounting concern that speed and aggression are overtaking basic control. In Houston, agents chased a van after identifying a suspect likeness and a plate tied to an undocumented registration. They fired into the vehicle and killed Lorenzo Salgado Araujo, a construction worker who had been in the country for decades and was likely not the main target. In Biddeford, Maine, ICE agents shot Joanne Sebastian Guerrero, a 25-year-old Colombian immigrant who reportedly had work authorization and a 3-year-old child. DHS Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen said she also was not the intended target. What matters here is the pattern. A whistleblower says ICE cut more than 200 hours of training, including firearms, use of force, and legal authority, while rapidly expanding with a massive DHS funding increase. At the same time, political pressure appears to be driving volume. Stephen Miller pushed for arrest targets as high as 3,000 a day, later 2,000, and ICE recently detained more than 10,000 people over 5 days. President Trump then publicly praised vehicle stops and urged ICE to keep using them even amid pauses and public backlash. The practical concern is straightforward: more agents, less training, higher quotas, riskier encounters. Accountability is also slow. Federal investigations into immigration-related shootings can take months, which is feeding protests, fear in immigrant communities, and dangerous attempts to flee encounters. Alongside enforcement, the administration is also tightening legal immigration channels. One proposed rule would cap F1 student stays at 4 years. That's a direct problem for graduate and PhD programs that often run 5 or 6 years. And it could also disrupt optional practical training, which is a major bridge to H-1B sponsorship. Another proposal under consideration would require some overseas green card applicants to post a $100,000 refundable bond, returned only after U.S. citizenship. Since that process usually takes at least 5 years, critics say the rule would effectively price out many applicants. Officials describe these moves as anti-fraud measures. In practice, they would make already narrow legal pathways harder to use. Abroad, the highest impact risk is the possibility of a wider U.S.-Iran conflict, and the way that could hit energy flows fast. Administration discussions reportedly include options ranging from airstrikes on hardened sites like the Pickaxe Mountain Complex to ground deployments or seizing islands near the Strait of Hormuz. Strikes are already expanding across more Iranian regions. Iran has hit back at U.S. bases, and outside governments, including Pakistan, are urging negotiation to stop a broader war. The market relevance is immediate. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the world's key energy choke points, so even the threat of disruption can lift oil and fuel prices and shake broader markets. There's also a political clock here. Analysts warn that a short shock followed by lower prices might help incumbents, but prolonged fighting and higher fuel costs would likely hurt Republicans heading into the midterms. Fuel pressure is already building from another direction. U.S. diesel futures jumped about 20% after a Russian export ban, and the national diesel average moved above $5 a gallon. Domestic stockpiles are near their lowest levels since the early 2000s, which leaves little cushion if supply gets tighter. Why this matters beyond trucking is that diesel feeds through supply chains. Higher diesel usually means higher shipping, grocery, and consumer costs, and that tends to show up clearly in voter sentiment. President Trump is also making a new election security claim with international implications, alleging Beijing accessed roughly 220 million U.S. voter files and calling it the largest compromise in election data history. He says China used that data to target him in 2020, but he has not explained how the alleged access would have changed vote outcomes. The problem for the claim is that a 2021 DNI assessment under John Ratcliffe found no evidence of foreign meddling in the 2020 election. Observers see the timing as political, tied to proof of citizenship measures in the Save America Act and broader midterm messaging as Republicans face pressure on the economy and foreign policy. Beijing has denied interference and warned the fight could complicate diplomacy ahead of Xi Jinping's planned September visit, though trade priorities may limit the fallout. Another story with immediate public impact is the Canadian wildfire shift eastward toward Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes, with roughly 800 active fires cited in current reporting. Smoke is driving air quality alerts across major cities including Toronto, Detroit, Chicago, and New York, with some places seeing record particulate readings. For listeners in affected areas, the practical takeaway is simple. This is a real short-term health issue, especially for children, older adults, and anyone with respiratory problems. A few fast market notes. The S&P 500 has more than doubled over the last 3.5 years and is nearing the historical average length of a bull run, which is reviving concerns about stretched valuations and AI-driven speculation. TSMC posted a 77% year-over-year profit surge and committed another $100 billion to its Arizona fab build-out, a strong signal that advanced chip investment in the U.S. is still accelerating. At the household level, a very different warning light is flashing. Pew says debt collection lawsuits in 2025 are at their highest levels, with Missouri filings nearly doubling since 2019. Most of those cases involve debts under $4,000, but default judgments can still mean wage garnishment, liens, or asset seizure. It's a useful reminder that consumer stress can deepen before headline delinquency data fully shows it. The Justice Department and national security nomination fights are feeding a broader credibility debate in Washington, with Senate hearings focused on loyalty, independence, and whether key nominees will serve institutions or the president personally. The U.S. also announced 25% tariffs on a broad range of Brazilian goods after a Section 301 investigation, a move that could trigger retaliation and widen trade friction. And on the health front, Merck won FDA approval for Lipfendra, the first cholesterol pill beyond statins. It can cut LDL sharply and is already being treated as a major commercial and clinical milestone. Those are the developments with the biggest practical stakes right now: enforcement, escalation, energy, and the costs that reach everyday life fastest. This is Podkey Daily News. Thanks for listening. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.